The way Yuta and Sukuna's dynamic in Jujutsu Kaisen is handled is some of the most exciting stuff I've read recently. In Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuta and Sukuna are two characters that stand as an antithesis to one another, yet they converge in their monstrous nature. As a person who would do anything for those that he cares for, what is he to do when a natural disaster, such as Sukuna, threatens the lives of everyone that he loves? The decision he's apparently come to is to become a monster himself. Even if it comes at the cost of his life, happiness, and comfort, he will protect them. I've come to really like Yuta's character, as any video of him I make guarantees a hit, and his obsession with caring for the people around him. But what makes him go from like to love is how he clashes with Sukuna both directly and indirectly. In this video, I'll discuss their dynamic, defend Yuta's decisions, and explore what the story intends to convey about monsters as a whole in the series. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this yap session. Yuta would first vocalize his purpose as a sorcerer in his battle against Gojo. The moment that Yuta saw all of his friends almost dead at his hands, he snapped and matched a weakened Gojo in strength. Yuta has never really had or cared about anything except for the people that he loves, so naturally, he'd value them more than anything else in the world. But now there's a huge issue with this. There's been a character that has entered the story that Yuta cannot simply just defeat to protect his friends and go on with his life. This character being Ryomen Sukuna, an ingenious monster who wants quite the opposite currently, this being to kill every single one of his friends and activate the merger. Sukuna is now the perfect challenge for Yuta's purpose. When Yuta arrives to battle Sukuna for their first round, Sukuna knows exactly what to say to him. He beckons for Yuta to challenge him with all that he has, as if he cannot defeat him here, everybody will die. This causing Riga to immediately come out and respond with nothing but frustration as she attempts to crush him beneath her hand. I love this segment 100 times more after chapter 261 because this chapter really reinforces how much Yuta truly loves the people in his life. He was forced to sit back and watch as Gojo was killed right in front of him, something he so desperately did not want to happen. I truly think that although Yuta was determined to take over Gojo's body before the battle against Sukuna, he only thought it was a failsafe. And when Gojo died in front of his eyes, it became reality. You can truly see the frustration as he knows that he has to sit back and observe, that he just had to watch his master get killed in front of him because he knows he's the insurance. Sukuna manages to torment Yuta in a different way than he torments Yuji. It may not be as direct or intentional until 248, but it's all there and it's obvious that he's interested in Yuta as a sorcerer, unlike Yuji. He again has wanted to drag out the monster within Yuta that we see in 261 in contrast to Yuji, the child that he wants to crush, take his ideals, and mince them into shreds. It's a great mirror between these protagonists, and the way I see it, it's only reinforced my belief that Yuji serves to destroy Sukuna's philosophy of strength that has been propped up and built upon throughout this entire story. The climax of Yuta versus Sukuna is in chapter 261. The grudge match of the relentless typhoon versus the indomitable fortress begins. But before diving into this, it's essential to address the huge elephant in the room, Yuta using Gojo's body. I'm sure by now that you've heard this over and over again, but Gojo is a weapon of Jujutsu, and as we can see, he serves as this even after death. My counterpoint to this being something wrong with the character or the story is that Gojo is the first sorcerer to break the rule of a sorcerer never dying without regrets. Gojo has a fate that apparently only he, and arguably Kashimo, have had the pleasure of receiving. The happiest ending to a very miserable and lonely existence. I understand that from a meta context it may be a bit wrong to use Gojo's body after death, but one, that's the point of the chapter when it comes to Yuta and Sukuna's conflict and his willingness to take Gojo's spot, and two, Gojo himself is not truly there, and I believe that's what really matters. Lastly, there's the segment of Gojo and his students before he goes off to kill the higher-ups. When Yuta asks Gojo to not become a monster, he chooses to not respond to that, and he says in his head that there is nothing that can be done about this. Back then, he was left behind, and now he has to catch up to Gojo. And well now, bro certainly caught up. Alright, my bad. But I think this falls in line with the theme of both Gojo and Gojo becoming monsters by abandoning their humanity for the sake of their goals, and the price to pay for this is becoming Frankenstein monsters. And I'm sure there's a better way to put it, but I'm not sure as of now. But I believe that's the reason we have that page in the same chapter of the Gojo body possession revealed. Gojo gave Yuta consent to do this, and also he has had a perfect happy ending. I'm unsure as to why anybody who claims to love Gojo's character would want him back in the story, and for people who say he could have done more, that applies to 99.9% of characters in fiction. There is no endpoint to growing as a person. A character can always do more no matter how far they've come. At some point, you have to prioritize the message over the character and cut them off. To conclude this point, I personally believe that it's okay for Gojo to be used as a weapon since he's gotten the most peaceful, happy resolution in the series, and it's just time to let his soul rest. Now that we've gotten that out the way, we can speak about monsters and such. Firstly, I want to define what I think a monster in Jujutsu Kaisen is. I believe that a monster in this series can be defined by someone who has abandoned any semblance of their humanity in order to achieve their goals or pursue their own purpose. This abandonment can be manifested in many ways, such as sacrificing personal values, ethical boundaries, or emotional connections. In the context of Jujutsu Kaisen, monsters are not just physically strong entities but characters who have been through a transformation in their nature, driven by their desires, obsessions, or circumstances in order to realize their dreams. With Yuta and Sukuna's second round beginning, the story from my interpretation at least, seems to ask if becoming a monster is the only way to combat another monster. And if you ask me personally, I'd say that I believe the story is gearing to give us multiple answers. There are 3 characters that currently stand out to me when it comes to this specific topic: Yuji Todori, Yuta Okkotsu, and Hakari Kenji. Before I get into this, just because I say one thing for Yuji, it does not mean that my thoughts for Yuta would have to perfectly fall in line with Yuji's. I see stories as art, and I think they can go in multiple ways or be interpreted in multiple ways. There's no one way a story should go or be written. So take each of my thoughts on these characters as different timelines, or if they all work together, you can take them that way too. I'll briefly address Yuji, as I've been talking about the clash of his and Sukuna's ideals for a very long time on this channel. Yuji Todori and Sukuna are mirrors. Yuji considers himself to be a cog in a massive machine that is Jujutsu society. Almost every single one of his gifts, goals, and strengths were given to him by someone else. His purpose is to save as many people as possible and to eradicate Sukuna as quickly as possible. Sukuna, on the other hand, deems himself to be a deity that should not be touched by anyone who isn't worthy. He's apparently obtained all of his strength on his own through his countless battles, and Sukuna's purpose is to exist, maximize his pleasure through battling the merger, and crush Yuji's spirit before doing the other two. I've been saying it for a long time now, but no matter how the story goes, it will always be natural for Yuji to continue on this path as Sukuna's opposite. Never going down the path of the monster, but continuing to carry the burden of all those who have sacrificed for him. Defeating Sukuna after going down a path that stands against everything he represents. It may be excruciatingly difficult for Yuji to secure the victory and bring to fruition everyone's efforts against Sukuna, but it will happen. There's way too much on the line for him to fail. I think 261, despite people hating how Yuji was treated in this chapter, gives us a very blatant reminder of this. Yuji seems to be finishing off Sukuna, and he thinks of Choso's sacrifice and pushes forward, only to be smacked away in the next page and all of the monster talk beginning throughout the entire chapter. Why do that to him? From how I see it, I think Gege knows that people would see this and be like, what the hell? You're probably supposed to feel discouraged, but the only correct answer for Yuji, no matter how things go, would be for him to get his ass back up and do the best he can to defeat Sukuna and try again, and at some point he will succeed. I say all of this to say, Jujutsu Kaisen makes Yuji suffer a ton in the story and make the reader look at him and feel sorry for how he's treated, because it's a great representation of what it's like to always do the right thing and what will come your way if you choose such a path. You will get uppercut by the world many times over just doing the right thing. You will feel as if you're always being cheated or wrong. You'll even feel very hopeless at times. But at the very end, if you do manage to win and pull through all the unfairness of the world, you'll know that you did it the right way. In another way, Yuji can be said to represent how excruciatingly painful life can be at times, whereas Sukuna can be said to represent how fast death can come. I truly want Yuji to crush Sukuna's beliefs so bad, and as long as he wins the war, he can lose as many battles as he needs to. It's very difficult to be as good of a person as you want to be in this world, but Yuji can serve as inspiration for this. All of these monsters in Jujutsu Kaisen have paid a great price for their strength. Yuji will likely be the first to not, and I pray at the very least he can obtain a happy ending due to all of his struggles if he does die at the end. Jujutsu Kaisen has always been dear to my heart because it's a great take on morality, and someone like Yuji, who always wears his heart on his sleeve, is the perfect protagonist for such a story. Now we move on to Yuta. I find Yuta to be quite compelling and interesting, as he's obviously being tainted by Sukuna's beliefs, and well, there's not much of a choice anyway, so I don't think that Yuta is wrong to make the decisions that he has in the recent chapter. In the end, Yuta is still doing what he must to follow his purpose, which is to protect the people he loves by any means necessary. I've spoken about this before, but Yuta has been the only special grade sorcerer to have their obsession and purpose violated by another character and continue to live on, so I was always sure that Sukuna would push Yuta to another level, just not in the way it happened. Yuta taking over Gojo's body has allowed him to enter the territory of monsters and literally become the next Gojo. However, do I think it's a harmful message that reinforces Sukuna's message? No, not really, because it's a massive sacrifice that will only contribute to Yuji's mission to crush Sukuna and everything he stands for. It's only going to be a 5-minute thing, so I'm not too worried about it pushing Yuji's progress to the side and throwing everything the story stood for out the window. It'd also be ironic as Sukuna encourages what may be the final nail to the coffin that Yuji will be burying. If Yuta manages to lead Yuji to victory with whatever he does to Sukuna, he will fulfill his purpose as a sorcerer and a character and protect everyone that he loves, even if that requires being a monster. To be very clear, as long as the sacrifice serves Yuji's mission to defeat Sukuna, it will align with the story's broader and most important themes. Lastly, Hakari. Why do I bring up the Stallman under this topic? I simply say, watch out for him. Gege seems to have plans for Hakari bigger than you may think at first. In the beginning of their fight, Uraume speaks to Hakari after witnessing his battle style. The sorcerers of this modern era have an intense obsession with remaining human. They so desperately want to hold on to their humanity, constantly telling themselves to hold back from destroying what can be so easily crushed with their overwhelming power. It is that human fear being alone that makes them weak. But you are different. You do not share that fear. I will no longer think of you as human. Hakari responds to this speech by asking about why everybody is so hung up on humanity. But you know what? All this talk about humanity is getting me hyped up, so bring it on. The recognition of Hakari's unique mindset at this moment must be foreshadowing his role in challenging the limitations of his humanity, and I believe he's being built up to be a monster. It's quite fitting that he was the one chosen to fight Kashimo and Uraume, two sorcerers who have abandoned their own humanity and their own rights. Not only this, but chapter 261 has Hakari be the only one to agree with Yuta's plan, under the circumstances that it's a last resort. Everyone else argued against it until Yuta would have his outburst about Gojo. Hakari seems to dip his toes into this mindset that everyone else seems to struggle with or fight against in the series, and I believe it indicates Hakari's readiness to embrace being a monster if it were ever required. But I'm not sure what Gege would do with Hakari if he were to become a monster. You guys think about it in the comments below for me. When it comes to the relationship between humanity, monsters, and the narrative in Jujutsu Kaisen, I think the series is using its ensemble cast of characters to explore the nuanced moral perspectives that the characters may have on this subject. Morality has always been a very difficult subject for anybody to tackle in their story, and Gege seems to express his beliefs in morality through Yuji, Sukuna, Yuta, and more. But if you ask me, Megumi Fushiguro said it best. We aren't heroes fighting for justice, we are Jujutsu sorcerers. No one can ever judge us, so we must continually prove the worth of our existence. We do not have the luxury of thinking about ourselves, we've just got to save people. Megumi makes the assertion that all sorcerers need to prove their worth, and I believe that encapsulates all of their struggles. Their actions that follow reflecting their interpretation of morality and sacrifices that they will make. Yuta being influenced by the two strongest sorcerers, Sukuna and Gojo, does a great job at embodying the most tragic twist on sacrifice. The state we see Yuta in currently serves as a response to the threat that Sukuna brings. Meanwhile, contrasting Yuji's principled opposition, Jujutsu Kaisen has created an amazing narrative through its exploration of morality, strength, and humanity for both Yuji and Yuta, and I cannot wait to see how they'll both conclude their stories. Gege Akutami is cooking a great meal for all those who partake and indulge in Jujutsu Kaisen as art, and I'm very excited to see how this whole thing about monsters is handled and where it leads up to. If you enjoyed the video, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.